Yeah, it's taking a while to pound all these fence posts in. The majority of them went in pretty good with the backhoe. I have to get off the backhoe and use this thing by hand. When the backhoe decides it's not, or when the post decides it's not going to go in using the backhoe, a lot of times if I got off the backhoe and used this thing as a post pounder by hand, it would go in a little bit further. Sometimes I can get it to go all the way down to the 5-foot mark where it's supposed to be. Keep in mind, these are 8-foot tall T-posts made in the USA, nice thick steel. But that backhoe, if it got to a decent rock and I tried to hit it a couple more times, it would buckle that T-post underneath that pipe. So I was pretty careful after the first couple. I did end up breaking one off because I bent it over too far with the backhoe, and then as I straightened it back up, it snapped off. But for the most part, the fence posts are in. I'm gonna finish this string right here and get these down. I did this first part of the fence without this 5-foot piece of pipe. So I'm gonna take this 5-foot piece of pipe, since it's 5 foot tall, which is where I want my fence to be. I'm gonna put it on each one of these and make sure they're down as far as they can go, or to the 5-foot mark. The fence line, this fence line is 280 feet. The other fence line from the road down is 470 feet. Across the front is 420 feet. And then we have the diagonal, which goes down that green area, that little path. So my best measurements, I could figure this is around 3.5 acres. Around the house, where the garage will be, the greenhouse, chicken coop, anything in here. Give the dogs an area to run around. 3.5 acres is plenty. And then after we fence in the rest of the 40, we'll have the rest of the 40 for the dogs to run around also. But for now, let me finish tapping these posts in, and then I'll show you the other things that I've been doing while I've been waiting for my electrician to show up. Hang out for a minute. I'm gonna finish pounding these fence posts in, and then we'll take a little walk around. This is the south side, south fence line. This is the 470 feet. I think it was 470 feet. Had to clear out a good chunk of that down there just to put the fence in. That was a chore on its own. It took about, well, I'd say altogether it took about 4 or 5 hours to clear out just the path line so I could run the fence. With the days being kind of short, it takes a while, a good chunk out of the day. I don't really get out here first thing in the morning when the sun comes up, because it's pretty cold. But by 9 o'clock, I'm out here working. So we got a few trees. There was about 3 or 4 oak trees up there I had to dig up that end, and then all this. You can see the undergrowth. I mean, it looked just like that, just like this. Big chunks of stuff just kind of pushed out of the way so that I can get to my fence to put it up and maintain it. And eventually, all this stuff in here will get cleaned up. It'll get cleaned up first, because that's inside my fence where my house and my dogs will be running. Well, my house won't be running, but my dogs will be running in there. And I want it to be nice so that I can see where they're at, see what they're doing, and see if they're getting out. So this out here is our seasonal runoff area. It comes through and goes all the way down from fence line to fence line on my property. It runs north to south. So this fence, since this seasonal runoff isn't straight, this fence kind of does a little curvy thing going up to the other fence line. And I had to cut this path too. This is an old oak tree stump. The best guess anybody could give me was that the tree was about 250 years old when it died. I don't know how long it's been sitting like this, but I'd like to try and preserve this thing the way it sits. I don't know how I'm gonna do it because it's kind of falling apart, but it would be nice to be able to kind of tip it, see if it's weak at the bottom, maybe get it on a platform, something like that, and get it up to where I can preserve it somehow. I don't know if anybody out there has ideas on how they can preserve something like that, but I'm open for suggestions. It's kind of the reason that oak tree stump didn't get bulldozed over. I purposely went around it. There were 3 trees that I had to uproot to space these trees out better, and hopefully these trees will live. We're also going to have a little more parking over here when all said and done, so we can walk from this area straight down to the house. So clearing out a couple trees around here, smoothing this area out. I've still got a lot of work to do on smoothing, but before I get too carried away with that, I'm also digging the ditch for the power line that goes to the house. Where that orange mark is on the bottom of the concrete there, that's where the power comes out from underneath the slab. There's a water line and a power line that go from the pump house out there, down through here, and over to there. That's why there's a space missing. That space right there I have to dig by hand, because that's where that water and power line go through. I don't want to break that water line with my backhoe, or I won't have water to the place I'm living now. But we're getting this ditch dug from here, come up here, and then across to the 400 amp main, which is sitting over there. Started getting that ditch dug. We're obviously not going to cross the driveway until we're ready for an inspection, because he wants to come out and see that this pipe is buried deep enough. And this whole area right here is going to stair step down to the house. So this right where I'm standing is going to get built up. Probably, well, if you look at the woodshed, it's built up in that corner about 1.5 feet. So right where I'm standing right here is going to be built up about 1.5 feet. Where my pipe goes for my electricity is going to be that much deeper in the ground. But since that's probably a year or so away, the inspector says he wants to see that ditch dug. So I can't just dig it, put the conduit in, and rebury it. What I'm going to do down there is dig it, put the conduit in. Probably, I think it's going to go underneath that water line, because I don't think the water line is quite deep enough. And then I'll backfill right over top of the water line. And if he wants to see, he'll be able to see where it goes underneath the slab and then the other side of the water line. And if that doesn't make him happy, I can get a shovel and dig out that last little bit so you can see it all the way. Past plowing lines for the fence and putting fence posts in and working on the ground around here, digging a ditch. I did do a little bit of wiring to the backhoe. I finally got around to replacing the positive cable that goes from the battery to the starter and the negative cable that goes from the battery to the frame. Makes it a whole lot easier to start. That old 1968 wiring was getting pretty corroded and pretty nasty. Wasn't making a very good connection. So every once in a while I get a little bit of work done to everything. This seems to be one of those last 3 days that everything got done a little bit. I am happy that all the T-posts are basically put in. I do have to go back. I haven't put any H-posts. A lot of guys will take railroad ties and make H-posts every, I think they say every 250 to 300 feet, and that kind of strengthens your fence. I'm gonna head into town. I got a couple things I gotta do in town. I gotta pick up some packages at the post office, and I've gotta get a burn permit through Department of Natural Resources for these massive burn piles. Big burn pile over there, big burn pile over there. I want to get these things lit off as soon as it snows again. Get a little bit more snow on the ground, light these piles off, get them burnt down so next summer they're not sitting there looking like an eyesore. But until next time, go make something.